question. How many of you have set benchmarks for yourself and what have you done to achieve them? I'm going to tell you my story through a series of benchmarks that I have set and strive to achieve. As a little kid growing up in HAL, which is Hindustan Aeronautics in Nasik, my dream was to be a pilot. Right? My benchmark was all those cool dudes who were flying MiGs at sonic speeds and supersonic speeds over air. Like all kids out there, right? We really wanted to be those kind of guys flying up in the sky. But then that dream crashed and burned when I realized that I had classes and I had knock knees, so I couldn't even get into NCC, right? So that was the first awakening of what benchmarks you need to set for yourself, right? Post 10th standard, I moved from Nasik to Orissa. There was another HAL factory there, and my father got transferred. And I moved from the Maharashtra State Board to a new fancy board called CTSE. Right? And the learning curve was so big that I failed my first chemistry unit test. Right? And by the way, I had also started JE prep because my father was an IIT, so there was no other benchmark to go to. That was the only thing I had to do. And my first JE prep test, I got a mind-boggling 3 out of 100 in physics. Right? So I had a new benchmark for myself in 11th and 12th. I just had to pass all my classes, all my subjects in 12th. Post that, so I was fortunate enough to get into IIT Bombay. At that time, it was a completely new world that I entered into. Right? It was it was an ocean of overachievers who were probably toppers of classes across the board. I'm sure you have a bunch of those guys here in your campus as well. And I had to adjust and try to find my place in that world. Right? So there was a new benchmark to set. Can I actually be at least in the middle of that bell curve, right? Among the most brilliant people in the country, so to speak. Eventually, I found my calling there. There was a subject called thermodynamics, which most people hated, that I really started to enjoy. And then I decided to get into refrigeration, which was one of the subjects which applies thermodynamics in daily life. And so I went abroad to the US to do my master's and joined a company called Ingersoll Rand in their leadership program. They had a large division in refrigeration and air conditioning, so went there and started working. During that stint, so leadership program has multiple rotations across business units. So my second rotation was in a place that made gas turbine engines. So it was an entrepreneurial venture inside Ingersoll Rand, which was a larger business conglomerate, where I was working with a team of 70 people. 50 of them were from MIT, and about half of them already had their PhD. Right? And the head of research was this mad Russian scientist called Vladimir Polishchev. Suddenly my benchmarks in engineering were redefined. Right? I just couldn't be just one of the best from this country called India. I had to actually compete with the best in the world. Right? So, just trying to achieve to that level of excellence in what you're saying, in every presentation and every work you do in product development inside that company, itself set myself to a higher standard. Post that, I decided to come back to India because India is where the action is. Right? And that's where I set up the engineering center for the same company in Ingersoll Rand. I came back in 2004 to Bangalore. And it was a new setup, right? It was just me and my boss, and we pretty much kicked off the engineering center from scratch. And now I had a new benchmark. While I had done engineering before, can I actually build a business from scratch inside a company, right? As an entrepreneur. Now, business thinking was completely different from what we had done in engineering, right? So you had to, number one, set up a team from scratch. Number two, create a business that is potentially making money for the company. Number three, go and sell it, right? So you actually go to your company business units across the country and in the US and across the world and try to sell them your engineering services. And then you get them back and then you have to execute those services as well, right? So it was a completely different world in terms of just business understanding. Then I said, yeah, if I have to get into the business world, and I was really enjoying myself, then maybe business decision making is something that I need to learn. Can I actually be one of the best business decision makers in the corporate world? This was a new benchmark that I wanted to set for myself. So I applied and then wrote my CAT and then got into IIM Bangalore, which was also fortunate because I was married and my wife was a software engineer, so it kind of worked out. At IIM Bangalore, my mind opened up to a lot more possibilities than just sales, marketing, and operations and supply chain, which I knew in engineering. Right? It was a whole world of new choices, new ways that you can actually build your career. And one of those was consulting. Right? My goal at that time, if you remember, was to really understand what business decision making is all about. And consulting offered me that opportunity. Right? So I got into Bain and worked there for 3 years. And during that time, I really learned from the best. Right? Company CEOs, business unit heads, and most importantly, there was also a personal excellence benchmark for me. Can I actually compete with the best from all these school campuses across the country in that organization? Right? So there was a new professional as well as personal excellence that I had to achieve. As we go along in your careers, in my career, what I have seen is the world expands around you, right? And as the understanding of that world expands, you are actually setting new benchmarks for yourself. Post Bain, we decided to move back to Bangalore, and incidentally, there was a personal excellence benchmark that happened. I became a father. I had a daughter, and there was a new benchmark to be set. How do we not screw up as parents? And this is not something that you learn in any school, right? So far, you have to learn as you do. And now, as my child is growing up, I want to strive to be a parent who can actually help her realize her potential in the world. Right? That is a great benchmark to have in your life. After my corporate stint of about 12 years, I decided to jump onto an entrepreneurial journey. And as we jumped off, me and my co-founder set a new benchmark for ourselves. Can we actually be people who make a dent in the universe? Can we actually disrupt? Disrupt is a very cliched word that people use, but can we actually disrupt the categories and areas that we venture into by creating something truly unique? Right? So that was the benchmark that we set for ourselves. And as a marketer, so I wanted to be a marketer. And the consumer space was pretty much the holy grail for marketers. Right? So how do you understand consumer buying behavior? How do you understand the consumer mind map and why they put their hard-earned money to buy products and services, and what is their experience like? Right? Can you really revolutionize that experience? That was the thought. We launched a mobile payments app called Momo. It stood for Mobile Money Everywhere. This was in 2013 when 3G was just taking off in the country, and we were the first, one of the first in the country that actually created payments in the offline world. So we were doing payments in restaurants, retail stores, chai tapris, as you can see there, autos, and also toll roads, right? Before FastTag ever existed. Our idea was to create mobile payments in the offline world. Right? Most of the biggies out there during that time were Paytm, Freecharge, MobiKwik. All of them were doing recharges and utility bill payments at that time, right? So this was fairly new in that space. So it was genuinely something that could change the way people do transactions, right? From cash to digital. Ran this for about 3 years, had a great time, positioned it as a very quirky and tech-forward kind of an app. Interestingly, we did stuff very differently from most other payment apps out there. Any digital product that you see, a mobile app, typically does digital marketing, right? For us, most of our customers were in physical locations. So actually our marketing was a lot more feet on street, right? We used to have people in restaurants, in retail stores, trying to get people to download the app. We had banners at the toll road that you can see there, right? And a lot of them were, waiters wearing our t-shirts, billboards with our, branding on them. Those are the kind of initiatives that we did, right? And we had a lot of hyperlocal marketing as well. as soon as we signed up restaurants and retail stores in your area, we would actually go to individual apartment complexes and then do micro advertising there to get people to adopt the app. So it was a very different way of doing marketing for a digital product, very physical space marketing. This we got acquired by an e-commerce company called Shopclues, and I transitioned over from a small scrappy startup into a potential unicorn, right, which was operating at scale. So suddenly, the benchmarks of early stage entrepreneurship were completely changed. And there I was trying to run a profitable P&L in the merchant ecosystem, which is basically getting merchants on board and building their business on the platform. Within the e-commerce ecosystem, which is largely loss-making even now, we actually built a small profitable P&L of about, a couple of crores a month with the merchants who are building their presence on the platform. So that was a challenge that I took up for myself, can actually be profitable. Right? Post that, one thing we realized is that the world is moving both from a macro perspective as well as from a consumer behavior perspective. Right? So as Amazon and Flipkart were taking over as horizontal marketplaces, as Myntra and Nykaa were taking over as vertical marketplaces, we saw the next natural transition of people moving towards brands. Right? So the next thing that was going to happen in India was creation of brands. And we genuinely believe still that this decade is going to be the decade of brands in the country. You will see categories across consumption being changed by multiple new brands emerging who are going to have specific value propositions that will change based on the niche audiences that they target. Right? You will have a lot more emotional connect than all the commodity functional brands that you've been using until now. Right? We emerged from the Russian era to globalization, and now we have the disposable income to really ask, hey, what is beyond the commodity that I get today? Right? And that's where we will be. With that in mind, we wanted to get into footwear, and we decided to launch FlatX. FlatX is a product that is supposed to be great casual wear for work. Right? Think when people used to wear formal and semi-formal to work, right? Apparel to work. They used to be hush puppies, which was great shoes, work appropriate, and super comfortable for the workforce. Right? As people move to casual dressing, right? Jeans and joggers are the order of the day right now. Can there be a hush puppies in the footwear space that can actually define casual footwear? Right? So that was the intent that we wanted to capture, and that was the market category that we wanted to get in. Also because we were in the urban climate, tropical climate of India, we really wanted to create something that was as comfortable as what you wear on your body, which is t-shirts, right? Typically, in the tropical climate, you want to wear natural materials like cotton, which is naturally moisture wicking, great feel on your skin. Whenever it gets dirty, you just wash them and get them back as new, right? So we wanted to create t-shirts for your feet. We are not from the footwear industry, but the idea was, can we work backwards from first principles, right? And create shoes that are completely designed for this specific purpose, right? So our uppers, we started making them with natural fibers, bamboo, banana, and linen. All three because they have the best moisture wicking tendencies across all materials, right? Even better than cotton. So they are actually temperature regulating. They will keep your feet cool in the tropical climate. So sweat and breathability is a problem that you always have in your feet that we will solve. Second was the comfort. Right? If you are wearing these shoes for 10, 12 hours every day, you will have to create something that is genuinely comfortable, that you will not feel on your feet. So all our shoes are less than 500 grams in weight, and the sole and the insole are created for that body. Right? So the concept was to make this from scratch to suit the urban tropical climate and all-day wear for the casual workforce. Well, what happened? Everybody's, familiar with what happened in the Shark Tank episode. We ran into the pandemic 4 months into the launch. Right? So the whole concept of workwear went away. The whole concept of shoes went away. like when people were stuck in the pandemic. And it has been a 3-year struggle of trying to figure out how we survive in this market. Right? So that has been the journey. But for me, as a personal benchmark, when I started FlatX, it was about not just being a marketer, but actually being an entrepreneur who can inspire people to join us on our vision. Right? So number one. Number two, I actually wanted to build a business that could be a global, resilient brand that is built out of India for the world. Right? It was something, even now, the shoes that we make actually are sent both to the US and UAE with the same spec. We don't change the product at all. And we sell it at a significant premium out there because the product is built to be world class from day one. So that has been the aspiration, and that is what I have been trying to achieve. Not all benchmarks that you set for yourself, you will be able to achieve it. Right? Some of them you will succeed, some of them you will fail. In fact, FlatX has been a spectacular failure with everybody knows. But the beauty of benchmarks is you set benchmarks for yourself that make you want to be a better person than what you are. Even if you falter along the way, you will still be better off than what you were before. Right? And it is an internal metric. It is not driven by the world around you. It is driven by yourself. Right? So it is your own pursuit of excellence. And that is what I want to achieve every day. So it drives me to do whatever I want to do. Whether it is bad times, good times, it doesn't matter. And I am always trying to strive to achieve the benchmark that I have set for myself. There are professional benchmarks and then there are personal benchmarks. I still want to be the son that my parents are proud of. I still want to be a father, a grandfather that my children and grandchildren will be inspired by. What else is life but the pursuit of excellence? A series of benchmarks that you really want to set and achieve for yourself. Thank you.